We're going to talk about taking images out of Lightroom and into Photoshop and then bringing them back into Lightroom. Lightroom's a very robust editor, but it doesn't have the ability to really deal with pixels and altering those pixels. So we don't have a very easy way to add type to our images. We can't really combine or layer images together and reveal or hide different parts of images. Those are best done in Photoshop. So I'm going to grab one of these images, and if I right click on it, you can see right by where we had our photo merge, which is where we did our HDR or our panorama, just above that is Edit In, and I can say Edit in Adobe Photoshop 2022. And when I click on that, or if I hit Command E on a Mac or Control E on a PC, Lightroom is going to automatically launch Photoshop and open up my image. And so on this image, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the type tool, click in here, and I'm going to add some type to my image. Perfectly done, no big deal. I've added some type, looks great. So now if I say save as, you can see it automatically names it edit, but I'm going to erase edit and I'm going to put type. And I'm going to leave it as a Photoshop file. It's going to go in the folder that it came from. And I'm going to hit save. And the progress bar for the saving is down here. You can see it. It's a decent sized file, so it's going to take it a minute to save it or a few seconds to save it. But when it's done saving it, we can come back down to Lightroom down here. When it's done saving it, it'll add it automatically back into my Lightroom catalog. There you can see it just did it. It's calling it image 1 of 2 because it's tying it to the DNG, the raw file that it came from, so that we know that those two kind of go together. And you can see that the DNG has stayed unaltered here, and the one with type has the type in it. So I can switch between those two images. In other words, it's a new file that it's saved. So that's one thing that can be done by taking it out and going into Photoshop. Another thing that we can do is we can select multiple images. So you'll see on this image here, the cars are not on the right side. They're only in the center and on the left. And in this image here, the cars are not in the center. They're only on the right and the left. And in this third image, the cars are not on the left. They're only in the center and on the right. And so I'm going to take those three images by holding down Command and selecting all three of them. And then I right click. And now when I come up to Edit In, oh, it didn't select them. Let me reselect them. So all three are selected. They're very boldly selected now. I come up to Edit In, and you can see that it now has other options. I can merge them as a panorama. So if I didn't want to use the panorama tool in Lightroom, I could use it in Photoshop. Same thing with HDR. Or I could open them as smart objects. Smart objects are basically tied back to the original in Lightroom. So if I made changes to the develop module in Lightroom, it would automatically update with the photo or the file in Photoshop. But what I'm going to show you is open as layers in Photoshop. And when I click on that, what Lightroom is going to do is send all three of those images to Photoshop. And then it's going to put all three of them into a single file in Photoshop as multiple layers. And so you can see it's what it's doing right now. It's opening the images up and it's moving them one by one so that they're stacked up as 3 layers in the same Photoshop file. And it closes them out as it does it. So what I'll end up with is one final Photoshop document that has the 3 layers. The other Photoshop document that I have that's still open is my type, which I can close now that it's done saving. So I have my 3 layers. The top layer is my left and center, blank on the right. My middle one is blank in the middle. And my lower one is blank on the left. So I'm going to put my, I'm going to put my blank on the left up in the center of this here. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to show you some really a really quick edit in Photoshop. Next week, I'll do a much more detailed version of editing in Photoshop just to give you guys a little bit of a flavor of what's going on in Photoshop. But for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image and I am going to create what's called a layer mask. And so I'm going to click on this little rectangle at the bottom that has a circle missing out of it. And that creates my layer mask, which is a white block that's next to my layer. Anything that's white shows through on my layer, and anything that I paint on there in black is going to hide what's on my layer. So I'm going to choose my paintbrush. My color is set to black. I have a pretty decent sized brush. You can kind of see it there. My opacity is 100, my flow is 100. And so I'm just going to paint with black over this side of the image. And it's going to eliminate those cars. I think I need to come up here a little bit. There's a little bit of that car in the center. There's that one car there, but that's fine. So now I've achieved most of what I want to get out of this image. If I turn this one off in the middle, you can see that that's that center car. So I'm going to come down to the center one. I'm going to add a mask to that, and I'm going to paint over that car with the black. And so you can see just that quick with it making those files as layers and painting a few quick masks on there because my camera was locked down and the images didn't move in between. I have created an image where I've eliminated all the cars from the image. I could go in and, paint over and reveal different signs that may want to come up. I could see if I can paint over this top one. Yeah, so I can, there's the BTS banner that was showing up. I could kind of change other things that may have moved or changed in my image in order to reveal something different so that I can get a slightly different image out of it. Once I'm done with it, I'll do the same thing that I did before, which is a file, save as, and this one I'll leave as edit, and I'm just going to hit save. And it's going to save that image for me and automatically put it into Lightroom. So if we come back down to Lightroom down here, you can see that once it's done saving, I will now have a fifth image in here that'll look relatively the same in the small preview, but when I scroll over, it'll have no cars on the street. So that's a real quick look at getting an image out of Lightroom into Photoshop, doing something to it in Photoshop, doing a save as so that it comes back into Lightroom and completes that whole circle for us. Let's see how much it's still saving. It's only at 66%. With 3 layers on this image has become quite large, and so it's taking it just a little while to save. But I guarantee you that once it finishes saving, it will show up right here in Lightroom. I'll wait for that to happen. There it is. And there it is with the edit. You can see that it's loading the preview, so it looks really low res right now. Preview's loaded. There's my image with no cars. So that's running an image through Photoshop and back into Lightroom.